Alright, just a moment here. I'll get my screen switched over. And I do see some new names, so I'm going to run the poll here and just kind of see where some of these new people are at. Okay, so you should see my screen, but now I'm going to launch the poll here. Alright, the poll should be up for you guys. If you guys have any questions today, that would be great. Otherwise, last week we talked about, or I showed you, how to create a signal when price bounces off of a moving average. And this week, if there's no questions, I have another signal that I'm going to build for you guys and walk you through the thinking process again. So, all right, it looks like about 4 out of 10 people in here are new to BloodHound. So I'm going to start with some basics and show you new people. And now it's about 5 out of 10. Yeah, and show you new people to the workshop here that gets some support from Jeremy and I. All right, thanks for answering those questions. I'm going to close the poll. All right. So first, I have a Skype account here that I use for Shark Indicators support or BloodHound support. Right. So Shark Indicator is the company name, and BloodHound is the product name. So if you see me, if you use Skype, you feel free to add me as a contact, and if you see me available online, then that means I'm available for instant questions, instant support, and we can take care of whatever you need, whatever questions you got. All right. So there's that. Well, let me show you here. Up on top here, you can see my Skype name. It's Zach White, SI. SI is for Shark Indicators. So there's one. And then let me show you around on the website a little bit. All right, so here's the home page of the website. If you have questions, you can go to support and down to the contact us. And so you can put your questions in here, subject, and then your question down below. If you need help getting started, or stuck on a particular part of a system that you're wanting to build, you can use the book an appointment button here, and that'll book a one-on-one appointment with me, and we can help you get started with BloodHound, or just help you work out any particular solution that you're trying to find to your trading system. So, all right, some other resources here to help you guys get started. If you go to BloodHound and go down to Learn BloodHound, there's the documentation section, but I would suggest getting started using the video tutorials section here. Let me bring this up. So this has some starter videos. The first two are just to kind of get you familiar with BloodHound, with its interface and kind of some basics of how it gets started. And then the next couple of videos are some basics on one of the solvers. And then down below, there's a tutorial on using the logic nodes. All right. And we will be, we still have plans on adding more videos through this. So, and here's something new that I just recently I've been adding to the website, even for you veterans that have been around. So if you go to the documentation section, so like under BloodHound reference, this is the documentation section. All right, so if you go down here to the solvers, so if I go to the bar direction, I now have direct links to the latest workshop. So for you new people, a few weeks back I started a workshop series where I went through each solver one at a time and went into depth into explaining how it works. And so these video tutorials here takes you straight to that workshop video, and it jumps you straight to the time when I started talking about that particular solver. So like this video, I actually talk about 3 different solvers. But if you click on, if you use this video link, it'll take you straight to the time at which I started talking about the bar direction solver. So there's a new resource that we just added to the website, and a few of these solvers I still need to post up the video link. Let's see some other resources here. So if we go back to BloodHound, learn BloodHound, and then there's a tips and tricks section. And so these videos here are kind of like, well, like this first one here, if you're using some custom indicators, there are some custom indicators, particularly from third-party vendors, where they intentionally hide the data that you see on the chart. So the indicator will give you a plot on the chart, but that data is not readable by a strategy or another indicator. So this video tutorial helps you figure out whether BloodHound can read the data of your third-party indicator. And then just another video on using an indicator like the CCI, which is an oscillator that oscillates above 0 and below 0. And then the ADX, right? So the ADX indicator, it's trying to determine if you're in a trend or not. Although the ADX always slopes upward, always rises when you're in a trend. So even if you're in a downtrend, the indicator rises up, which is kind of a reverse relationship as compared to other indicators, right? So like with the SMA, if you're in a downtrend, the SMA is falling, whereas the ADX actually rises. So this video kind of teaches you how to use BloodHound when an indicator goes the opposite direction of the actual price action. So, and let's see, another good resource. If we go over to support, we have our support center, and the support center is where like the FAQ section is. So if we go up here to the support forum, you'll see there's several sections here. So there's another tips and tricks section on here. Basically, there's just some tips and tricks that are not in BO form. So let's see, support resistance. I'll just click on this one. And so there's a tutorial in kind of a screenshot mode, so it's just not a video. And so I kind of walk through how to, so at the beginning there's a question that a user had asked, and then I answer the question taking screenshots and using kind of an explanation. of what I'm doing. So there's another tips and tricks section for you. And this community help or general support, this is more like an FAQ section. So we get a lot, so this is where a lot of our commonly asked questions are in here. All right, so let me back it up to the website again. Let's see what else. Okay, yeah, that's right. So here, the training workshops. So Eric had asked if this is going to be recorded. So all these workshops are recorded, and this will take you there. So this list up here is the most recent workshops that were recorded. If you want to see all of them, you can click on this orange link here of the recorded webinars, and this will take you to all of them. And then they're archived by the month. So if you want to look at some older ones, just go into that month, and you can scan through, and there's a brief description of what was covered in that workshop. So you might find one that you're particularly interested in. So and if you really start getting in advanced, there's, well, here, let me point it out. On some of these workshops, there are some download files. So the green buttons are the BloodHound templates, and the red buttons are NinjaTrader's chart template that will set up your chart. So this chart template is the same thing as going to your chart. If you right-click on it and go to templates, right, you can load up a chart template. So that's what this red button is. The green button is for loading up a BloodHound template. So once you have, I'll go through the process of putting BloodHound on a chart again, but once you have BloodHound on your chart, if you bring up the interface, right, you can open up a template. And so the green button would give you these template files that BloodHound saves. And so what I was pointing out was that this download section essentially is kind of like one web page that has all of those downloadable files for you. So, all right, so with that, let me get started. And let's see, I just want to check the questions here. Okay, no questions. Let's get going. So I'm going to delete BloodHound off my chart and show you guys, just kind of the basics of getting BloodHound on the chart here. So if we right-click on the chart and go to Indicators, and all of shark indicators are under SI. So I'm going to jump down to the S's, and let me get my Skype off this screen here. So jump down to the S's, and if I scroll down to the SI's, so you can see there's all these SI. So there's BloodHound, and then there's some other indicators. You'll notice that I have some additional SI indicators on mine because I'm running a special debug version. But you guys will see the SI swings, which is an indicator, and the SI swings high-low, another indicator, SiChameleon. So So let's add BloodHound to the chart. And we'll hit OK. And these green bars are BloodHound. And you'll notice when you add BloodHound that a button appears up on the top of your chart and a pull-down menu. So clicking the button brings up BloodHound's interface. And you'll notice that right here the button just says BloodHound template. And that's because there's no name defined. If I go over to this chart, you'll see this BloodHound button has a name on it. So a template has been named on this chart. So let me show you how to get that going. So right here on the interface, you'll see the name is blank. So we can give this a name by clicking the change button here. And so the change button will allow you to put a name in for the first time, or if you would like, so say like you get so far along on building your system, and you would like to create kind of like a save point. So what you can do is you can change the name and start kind of going off on another tangent in building your system, and you change the name, and so that way you kind of have the old name get saved and it's not being modified, and you start working on the new template. And so what it does is it creates a new template for you. And I am using a naming convention for these workshops, and so let me yeah, so that was the latest one, and let's see, today's the 7th. So let me change the date, the name on this to the 11th and the 7th. And so now we have a named template, and the button up here reflects that name. All right, so now we can get going. Let me close up. So let me kind of explain the signal here and how this works. Actually, this isn't a full-fledged signal. This is just more for training materials. Wouldn't really recommend trading these. They're definitely kind of just rough starting points. They definitely would, if you want to pursue them, they definitely need some filtering to kind of filter out the fault signals. You might want to put some trend filtering conditions on these signals, but they're good training material. So this signal is based off of the volume oscillator indicator, and I was looking at a website. I believe it was called the Naked Trader. It's a fairly old website that some guy kind of posted his signals on, and I think it was also kind of an advertisement for a trading room that he eventually started. But anyways, I was taking those signals and implementing them into BloodHound, and let's see, I think one of them might have used the volume oscillator, and I just accidentally stumbled upon looking at the volume oscillator and noticing that when the volume oscillator goes in the opposite direction of price, that it seemed to give a pretty interesting signal. Right, so the volume oscillator is heading down, price is heading up, so price is diverging from the volume oscillator, and then on the first bar where price starts going in the same direction, as the volume oscillator, that's what triggers the signal. Let's see. Yeah, so overall the volume oscillator was moving down and price was moving up. And then on the first bar where price moves down, that's when we get our signal. And you probably noticed I have another indicator on the volume oscillator. So what I noticed was to get some more signals, because you can see that the volume oscillator is very choppy. Even though you might have an overall uptrend on the volume oscillator, sometimes you get like a little pullback. I have to stretch this out so we can see it. Yeah, so right here, this is a good example. Let me put a marker on this. Actually, so like on this particular bar, you can see we have an overall down direction on the volume oscillator, but this one bar has a little pullback. You know, so the oscillator is not constantly moving down. And when I first built this signal, I noticed that these little pullbacks would prevent a signal from occurring. And so what I did is I took a moving average, just a simple SMA, and with a period of 2 to smooth out the volume oscillator. So that way it would give me some more signals. So I noticed it was preventing a lot of good signals when I was just using the raw oscillator values. So I smoothed it out with an SMA, and it gave a lot more signals. So with kind of that background, I'm going to start building the signal for you. So let me yeah, so this system's not using a logic template. You can kind of tell when a system's not using a logic template because you can see how the BloodHound's output has more of an analog feel to it. So typically when you start using the logic template and you start using AND nodes, it gives you more of a digital type output. All right. So I just need to refresh my memory here of how I built this. I'm going to pull this one off to my other monitor. And so we're going to build the system on this chart here, on this blank template that I created. So let me kind of get myself situated. So let me take off these SMAs. These are not needed. There we go. All right. Just about ready here. All right, let's get started with looking at the volume oscillator. All right, so what we're noticing is we're kind of looking for the volume oscillator to be moving in an overall direction. All right, so we're looking for the volume oscillator either to be kind of moving down in a downward slope or in an upward direction or an upward slope. So what we're doing, when we're doing that is we're comparing, let me slide my chart over here. So if we're looking at the bar on the furthest right, we're taking the value from the indicator, let's just say this is the current bar, and we're comparing it to the previous bar to see, what direction is moving. Right, so that simply is a comparison, right? Comparing the current bar to the previous bar. So let's implement that. So that's a comparison. Add that onto the chart, and just as a good convention, I always like to name the solvers to match the indicator that is being plugged into the solver. So this is the volume oscillator. Right, and a lot of times I'll just kind of clip the name of the solver. So I always like to leave the name of the solver on there as well, so I know which solver is being used. This kind of helps out. And let me pause for a moment. You may have heard, so I've got a couple of charts here. Well, I'm actually running some strategies with Raven. So I'm just going to have these running in the background just for some fun. So if you hear the Ninja Trader gal saying order filled, that's what's going on. I just thought these would be kind of fun to watch here in the background. So the strategy isn't running on these charts. These charts have the chart trader turned on so you can actually see the profit and stop flags. Right. So I have the charts actually running. These strategies are actually off to the side. So that's what's going on with these two charts. So, and let's see, one of these, let me see, this is the 6E, and actually let me change this chart to match the chart time frame that the strategy is running on. It'll make more sense. So this strategy here is the MA bounce that we did last week, but it's running on a 5 range chart. So let me switch that over. There you go. That makes a little more sense. So right here, this when price came back and bounced off of the moving average, that's what triggered this trade here. And let's see, this other chart on the CL is running, it's also running on a 5 range. Let's switch that over. All right. Let's get back to building the signal here. Okay, so indicator A. So with the comparison solver, so what we're doing is we're comparing indicator A to indicator B. And indicator A can be, doesn't have to necessarily be an indicator. You can use the type field here to select what you want to compare. So if you want, you can use an absolute value. So an absolute value could be used with like the MACD or the stochastics indicator, where you would have an absolute value on the subchart, say like the 0 value. You could compare the closing price to something, so you compare the closing price to like a moving average. We have volume. You can bring volume in. Indicator, as it's set right now, so you can go in and select any indicator you want. And then there's the swings. So the swings is bringing in the SI swings indicator, and you can see that it's kind of a shortcut. You could also analyze the swings using just by selecting the SI swings indicator here in this section if you're using indicator, but this created a shortcut to all the indicator, to the SI swings indicator. So you can just plug in the indicator settings here and select what outputs you're wanting to use for your comparison. But for today, we're going to use the volume oscillator. So let's bring that up. Okay. So this window, as you can tell, is the indicator selection window. So it will show you all the indicators on your system that have a plot output. Doesn't necessarily mean that all these indicators are capable of working with BloodHound, but we did try to filter out indicators that don't have any particular plot or basically any kind of data out that BloodHound is not able to read. Yeah. Let's see. So we're looking for the volume oscillator. Put that on the chart. I'm just using the default values. And this section over here, this indicator only has one output. But let's see. Let me show you the MACD that has 3 different outputs. Just to give you an example for the new people in the room here. So if I put the MACD down here, you see the MACD has 3 different plots. And so you can go and select which plot you want to use. And wow, look at that. The oil moves pretty quick, doesn't it? It jumped in a trade here and price just came down and hit our target. So back to indicators with multiple outputs. So this section down here just allows you to select what output you want to use. So another example would be the stochastics. Right, it has the D and the K plot. So you can select which plot you're wanting to use. Let's put this back to the volume oscillator. Yeah, that's right. We're using the default settings. So with with BloodHound's indicator selector window, the only thing that really matters up here is pretty much the parameters section. So you'll see that there is a plot section up here, and that's not going to really affect anything. So if you make changes here, it's not going to make any changes to BloodHound, and it's not going to make any changes on your chart. Essentially, we just haven't found a way to hide the plot section yet. You can hide it that way, but essentially all that we're concerned about is pretty much the parameters section here. Just making sure that you have your periods set correctly for that particular indicator. All right, so if we hit OK, so So now we can see that we have the volume oscillator plugged into the indicator A section. And also we can see that BloodHound is starting to give us an output already. It's not really the one that we want, but BloodHound is starting to make the comparison. So what BloodHound is doing is it's comparing the volume oscillator values to the SMA14. Okay, so we need to get this switched over to the SMA14. Right? I'm sorry. We need to get the SMA14 switched over to the volume oscillator. Alright, so we jump down to the V's. As a little shortcut, a little note, you can just hit the letter of where you want to go. So if I wanted to go up to the B's, I can just hit B on my keyboard, and you can see it instantly jumps me up to the B's. So if I want to get down to the V's, instead of scrolling all the way down, I can just hit V, and it jumps me down to the V's. And just makes it a little quicker to find your indicator. Alright, so plug the volume oscillator in there. The parameters are still staying the same. Alright. And so what we're using this, just as to reiterate, we're using this comparison solver to compare what would be the current bar to the previous bar. All right, so I want to kind of, in a way, I want to look back one bar. And what allows you to do that is the displacement field. All right, so just like on any indicator, all right, so if I bring up, let me just bring up the indicator window. All right, so when you have NinjaTrader's indicator window up, you have this displacement field. And so these are doing the same thing. So the displacement in BloodHound behaves the same way as the displacement in NinjaTrader's indicator panel. So it's going to displace the indicator by however many bars we tell it. So, so indicator B, we're going to set that to be, looking back one bar. So we're going to displace that by 1. And so in effect, by displacing it by 1, it in effect takes the value of the previous bar and moves it forward to the current bar. And you can see the output is changed quite a bit when we do that. So let's take a look at the output we're getting from BloodHound. So you can see that when the volume oscillator is stepping up or rising, we're getting a long output from BloodHound. All right, so the output of BloodHound is matching the direction of the indicator. And then as soon as we get this 1 bar pullback on the indicator, you can see that BloodHound gave us a short, telling us that the indicator moved down for that 1 bar. Excuse me for a moment while I take a drink. So right now we're just looking at, this is just kind of telling us the current bar. So let me slide this over. All right, so we can see if we're on this bar furthest on the right of my chart, and we look back, we can see that the current bar is higher than the previous bar, so we're getting a long output. One thing I noticed about this signal that we're building is that I wanted at least 3 bars. I wanted at least 3 bars of divergence. And by divergence, I mean when price is moving the opposite direction, right? So we can see price is moving up, whereas the volume oscillator is moving down. So that's what I mean when I say divergence. So I noticed that we wanted at least 3 bars of this divergence to get a more reliable signals out of this. So right now, we built a solver just looking at the current bar. So now we need to build a solver that looks back at the previous bar and takes the previous bar and compares it to its previous bar. So it's going to be looking back 3 bars. And we can simply do that just by using the displacement function here. All right, so since this solver is already set up with our indicator plugged into it the way we want it, we can just copy it, and then I can change my displacement so I'm looking back an additional bar. Now, over here, you'll see there's some check boxes, and so that basically enables and disables the solvers. So if I only want to look at the newest solver that I created, I can uncheck the first solver, and now BloodHound only reflects the previous solver. And so let me watch. Let me kind of stretch this out here. It makes it a little easier to take a look. And let me mark this short bar on BloodHound. Let me mark it here, and I'll switch back and forth between the 2 solvers, and you can see how this short is being displaced. Right. So in the first solver we built, this BloodHound short is 1 bar over to the left, and this next solver, where the only difference is the displacement, you can see it shifted it over to the right, so it displaced it an additional bar. And another thing to note, right? I noted about naming your solver so you know what's going on. Well, since these solvers are exactly the same and the only difference is the displacement, I'm going to change the name so that I know exactly what's going on. So I have a 1, actually this top one, I'm going to go off of the displacement by indicator A. So this has a 0 displacement. I'm just going to use DS. Well, I'll just use DIS for displacement. And the next solver down has a displacement of 1. All right. Okay, so we now have, so if I turn both of them on, we now have 2 solvers looking for 2 bars of the volume oscillator moving in the same direction. So we can see here this these shorts right here. Let's see, let me put an arrow on there. Oh, that's not an arrow. Let's see which one is. There we go. So we can see that we got this red plot, or this short output, when we got to 2 bars moving down. And then BloodHound started plotting a short here. So let's add an additional solver. So that way we can get, we'll be looking for 3 bars in a row moving in the same direction. I'm just going to copy this, change the name, and change the displacement. And so now we can see that we got 3 bars of the volume oscillator moving down. Right, so from up here to down here, this would be the first bar of a down movement. And then we have the second bar of a down movement, and then the third bar of a down movement. And because this bar here did not get painted as a short, that's telling us that this bar is probably just, a fractional value greater, than the previous bar. So that's why we didn't get an additional short. It's very close. And so that's why I used an SMA to smooth out the volume oscillator to help compensate for things like this. Right. So let's work on adding smoothing out, adding a SMA and smoothing out this volume oscillator. So first, let me add it onto the chart. All right, so we'll go to indicators and go down to the S's. All right, and SMA. And when I do little tricks like this, I don't like to smooth more than 2 periods. To me, my kind of feeling is if I go to 3, sure, it'd be smoother, but to me 3 just adds too much lag into what I'm looking at. 2, to me, smooth it out just enough to where I'm not really getting any kind of lag from coming out of that indicator. Let's see, so alright, so I'm going to be white. I'm going to make this plot a little thinner, and we need to, for the input here, we need to feed the volume oscillator into it. So let's do that. All right, we're just using the default periods here. Hit OK, and I want to make sure it's on the right subpanel. So let me put it on the second subpanel. And you'll notice that, see, I have NinjaTrader's indicator panel open right now. And when I hit OK, NinjaTrader has to refresh the chart to add this new indicator onto it. And in order for NinjaTrader to refresh the chart, it's going to have to close BloodHound's interface windows. So these interface windows will automatically close for you. So I hit OK. All right, so there's the SMA of the volume oscillator. All right. So let me bring up BloodHound's interface again. Also, if you hit F5 on your chart to reload, that's also going to close the BloodHound interface as well. And yeah, another note. So when BloodHound's interface gets closed, you'll notice there's no OK button or cancel button. That's because BloodHound is always saving your current work. So when you hit the red X to exit, the interface, it automatically saves your current work to the file. So it's always saving to the file. And that's why we built in this change button. So say like you want to go muck around and you want to go off on a tangent, but you don't want to be messing up, your system where it's at right now. That's why we have this quick change button, so you can change the name, and so you're not modifying, where you're at, or so you're not so like say you have a good system already built, but you want to kind of tweak with it and play with it, see if you can improve it, but you don't want to modify the original. So use the change button to change the name, because there's no undo here yet. So anything that I add to this, if I exit out, it's going to always save any changes that I make to the file. Right? So if you kind of like have a master BloodHound template file, any changes you make to it, it's going to be saved, and currently there's no undo to get back to it. So we recommend just creating a new template file and working with that copy. All right, so we now have this SMA smoothing out our volume oscillator. So now, these solvers here are just using the raw volume oscillator data. Right, so let's switch them over so they're actually looking at the SMA smooth value of the volume oscillator. And that's pretty quick and easy to do. So what we need to do is just go and bring up the indicator panel again, and we just need to nest the SMA in here. Actually, it's the other way around. So I need to bring up the SMA. So I'm going to put that on there, switch the period over to 2, and now I need to find the volume oscillator and nest it in there. So I just want a single click to select it, highlight it, and then there's a nested input button. So I click on that, and you can see the volume oscillator drops down below. And theoretically, you could nest almost as many indicators into as many indicators as your computer can handle, as your CPU and the amount of RAM can handle, and probably maybe some limitations of NinjaTrader. Not sure. So yeah, so you can see I can just take all kinds of indicators and just keep nesting all kinds of crazy stuff. So let's see, I do need to have the one I want to nest selected, and then I can select the indicator, nest it in there, so you can see I have some kind of crazy nesting going on. So like if you want to make your own triple smooth moving average, right, you could nest, so like say like you're using this time series, let me remove this. So let's say you want to, like, I don't know, create some kind of weird triple time series forecast, right? So this is just a type of moving average. So I can add it in there, and I can nest it into itself, and I could nest it in one more time, and so I'd have like a triple, TSF indicator that I can feed into BloodHound. So yeah, so let me kind of get back to volume oscillator here. Get the SMA on there, and just be careful if you're into double clicking, as a shortcut. Just be careful, because if you did create, an elaborate nesting system, and if you double click on an indicator, it's going to remove all of that and take that indicator and drop it down. All right, so the settings for the volume oscillator are just the defaults, and this only has one plot output. Well, let me give you another example here. So let me go to the MACD and nest the MACD in there. Right, so I could pick whichever plot of the MACD I wanted to nest into the volume oscillator, which then gets nested into the SMA. So let me get that off there. And the only thing I need to do is change my SMA to a period of 2. So I get the volume oscillator nested into the SMA, which is going to give me the same results as what I have in the chart here. Hit OK there. And I need to do the same thing with indicator B. I'll just get through this one quickly. Alright, so I got the first solver set up, and you can see I have the SMA with the volume oscillator nested into it. There, and you can see the period values behind it. Alright, so what I'm going to do, it's going to be much easier if I just copy the first one that I made. So I'm just going to delete these guys. And just copy that one, and then I just need to change the displacement and change the name, and they're ready to go. Okay, so now smoothing out the volume oscillator made a pretty good improvement. To helping BloodHound see the overall direction of this indicator. All right, so now you can see we have several bars of a downward direction. Even though we can see that, we get this bar, which really didn't move, was slightly higher than the previous bar. And also with this one definitely you can easily see, but we can also see that the overall direction is down. And so now we get kind of some better looking results here. And as you can see, when I used to use an SMA period of 2, we can see that when we get this good strong pullback, that the SMA, because it's only a period of 2, the SMA pulls back significantly enough so that it's not smoothed out too much, and it kills the the upward direction signal here. So it's just enough to smooth out these little tiny pullbacks in the indicator. Right, so we can see it's smoothed out this little pullback here as well. All right, so this these 3 solvers address looking at our main indicator here. So the next step is to look at price. All right, so we want to kind of do the same thing. We're looking for price moving in an upward direction. All right, so we can so a simple way of doing that is we can just say, okay, let's just look at the close. So let's look at the closes here. So we're going to either be looking for the closes to get higher or the closes to get lower. And so once again, we're comparing, I guess, the close of the current bar to the close of the previous bar to see what direction price is moving. So once again, let me select the comparison solver, add that on there, and this time, let's see, let me rename this here. So we're going to be looking at the close. And I like to shorten these names here. So we're going to be looking at the close, and I'm going to just use the closing price here under type. And I want to compare it to the previous bar. Now if I select close here, we've got an issue because you see that the displacement setting disappears on us when that occurs. So to get around that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these both back to indicator. Put them both back to indicator. And I'm going to use a shark indicator's indicator. A little bit of a tongue twister there. So let me show you SiChameleon, or just call it Chameleon. So the reason why we built Chameleon is what it allows you to do. As you can see, all of these plots here that it has, and all these plots are referring to price points or price data from each bar. Right? So we can see we have the high, the low, the midpoint of the bar, the open and the close of the bar, and also we have the typical value, the weighted value, and the median value. So if you'd like to find out the formula for the typical, weighted, median, and also there's another one here, the midpoint. The formula for these values, NinjaTrader actually calculates these. And NinjaTrader does provide the formula for how they're calculated, and that's in the help documentation. All right, so if we just, I need to close this out in order to get back to the chart. So I'm going to be looking at the closing price. Okay. So to find those formulas, I can go to the chart, right, hit F1, and let's see, where did the help window go? Oh, here we go. And you can just do a search for, weighted or median or whatever, and you'll find the formulas in their help documentation. All right, so let me add SiChameleon down here to get the closing price. And I will also show you some other features that Chameleon has. Also, I'd just like to let anybody out there that is using Chameleon in their systems right now. Jeremy and I were discussing some of the behaviors of Chameleon when you're using this feature here. It says use alternate instrument. Let me shrink this over. So you can see this setting right here, use alternate instrument or time frame. So if I set this to true, you can see now what I could do is I could bring in any other instrument that you might have data for. So this chart is on the 6E, and I could bring in data from the 6A. So if I wanted to do some pairs comparisons, right, so yep. So there we go. So now I can bring the data from the 6A into my my BloodHound system, and so I can have the solver, this solver looking at data from the 6A instead of the 6E. Right. So this chart here is on the 6E. So that's kind of like one of the main kind of big features for using Chameleon, along with also getting these other price data, as well. And you can also set what bar type you want to use. So you could put it on a minute bar, or if you have custom bars. I know a lot of people like using RJ's Renko bars, those custom bars, so you can use those. You can see I have a couple of custom bars. I have this Ultimate Renko on here, and from Big Mike's I have the Better Renko and the Wicked Renko. Let's see. I had some other bar types on here, but they got overwritten by one of these other customs. Well, here we go. I have this range no gap. That's another custom bar type. So this primarily, the best use of this is to look at price data of a higher time frame. And another note, NinjaTrader works better when you're looking at higher time frames. NinjaTrader doesn't work very well if you're trying to look at a lower time frame. So if you have your system running on a 15-minute chart, but you want to get data from a 1-minute chart, NinjaTrader doesn't handle that very well. It's much better at working on the 1-minute chart and then looking up to the 15-minute chart to get data. So if you're using a system with multiple time frames, it's better to have your system or BloodHound working on the lowest time frame, in other words, like the 1-minute chart, and have it looking up to the higher time frames, like the 5-minute or 15-minute chart. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview of SiChameleon. For the new people in the room, I did a much better coverage on this in some of the previous workshops. So if you want to learn more about this, you can do that. All right, so let me get. So ultimately, I was using the Chameleon so I can get the closing price. And also, the main reason why I'm using Chameleon is so that I can get this displacement feature. All right, so I need to displace this by 1. So just as how we took the volume oscillators and we created a number of displacements here, 0 to 1, and this next solver we went from 1 to 2. So we're going to do the same thing with price. So I need to copy this 3 times, and then we change the name here. And change the displacements. we look on our chart, there we go. We can see that so far BloodHound has, so far the solvers that we have set up, right, is just looking purely for this divergence between the indicator and price. And not quite yet. So actually, yeah, so it's not looking for a divergence yet. You can see that when we have an alignment, right, so when the indicator is moving up and price is moving up, when they're both in agreement, BloodHound is giving us, telling us that direction. So right here, BloodHound's giving us a long, showing that they're in agreement. And if we look at what the original signal is doing, so essentially we're looking for this divergence, and I'm trying to remember. Let's see, I can see, so when price is moving up, so looking at this, the indicator, yeah, so the indicator is trying to predict, the direction. So that's how this signal is kind of working out. Since the indicator is moving down, but price action is moving against the indicator, we're looking for price to, I guess, exhaust and begin to go short. And that's why we're getting the short signal.
Target build.
I'm going to look back and try and find some better signals here. So let's see. I noticed that, yes, so oscillator's moving down. Yeah, oscillator's moving down. It doesn't look like there's, I wonder if I might have accidentally messed with this signal. We can see that the volume oscillator is moving down, and it gave us a long signal here, whereas the volume oscillator moved up, and it gave us a short signal here. So I'm trying to see what direction I want to pick. So let's see. So if we do have a divergence, let me find a divergence. So here's kind of a divergence. So right here in this section, where we can see price is moving down. Yeah, so price is moving down against the indicator. And then we can see price bounces back up. So we kind of get so price kind of gives us pullback against the indicator. So yeah, so when price pulls back, we want to look for a long signal. Yeah. All right. So let's implement that into this signal here. All right. So this is kind of what we're looking for. So price price is going to be moving down against our indicator, and whereas the indicator is moving up. So that would be having the indicator trying to predict the direction. So in a way, at least in this one instance here, that we're getting this pullback, but the indicator is telling us that we should be looking for a long. So what we want to do, since we're looking for a divergence, right, instead of getting a long, let me turn off the volume oscillator. Right, so right now I just have the price solvers turned on. So we can see that when price is moving up, we're getting a long. And when price is moving down, we can see that when we get price moving down for 3 bars, we're getting a short. But really, we want to reverse that so that when price is moving down, we're getting a long because we're looking for a divergence. So let's reverse the output of the price comparison solver here. So to simply do that, what we're looking for is, instead of A being greater than B, remember A is looking at the current bar, so let me slide this over here. So A is looking at the current bar, which right, is this guy, and B, indicator B, is looking at the previous bar. So B is looking at this bar. And so when A is greater than B, I'm sorry, when A is less than B, we want a long signal instead of this short signal. So right now we can see that we have A is greater than B. We're getting a long. We want A being less than B. So let's reverse these signals here. Right, so on the long output and on the short output, essentially all I did was just reverse them. So I went from A greater than B to A less than B, and that reversed. And the same on the short side. I went from A being less than B to A being greater than B for short. And I need to reverse the output for the other solvers as well. So let me reverse them for all of these here. Okay. And so now we get a long signal when price is coming down, and we can see that when price is moving up, we're getting a short signal. Okay. So now, so now we can see when we're getting a divergence between the indicator and price, BloodHound's giving us a signal in the direction of the indicator. And we can see the same thing here, right? So price is moving up, whereas the indicator is moving down, so we're getting the divergence. So this isn't the full signal yet. So this system over here that I already have built, you'll notice it's only giving us like 1 bar. It's only giving us a signal on 1 bar. And you'll notice the direction of the bar matches the signal. So we got a down bar here, which triggered that short signal. And over here, we got a long bar. Right? We got a long bar which triggered the long signal. Right? So we can see all of these long signals occurred on a long bar. So we have another solver that's looking at the bar direction to get confirmation, to make sure that price is done. So in a sense, so let me look back at this chart. Right. So even though we got a signal on this bar down here, we want to wait for price to basically be done moving up, and we're hoping it'll be done. Say, like for example, here, price continues to move up, and then we get a bar in the opposite direction, so a bar finally coming down, and so we're hoping that this reversal bar is telling us that price is done moving up, and so now it's safe to go short. Once a price bar confirms in the short direction, that's when we would like to get the short signal. We don't want to get the short signal as price keeps moving up against us. We want to wait until we get at least one bar in the down direction to get the signal. So we can add that filter in using the bar direction solver. Let's add that in there. And let me turn off all these solvers here just to show you the bar direction. It's pretty simple. So on the up bars, basically when the close is greater than the high for an up bar direction, you get a long signal out of BloodHound, or you get a long signal out of this solver, I should say. And simply enough, when the bars are moving down, you're getting a short output out of that solver. So this solver kind of adds an additional condition to our system. Let me turn all of these back on. And I just noticed so I noticed so I'm looking at the original signal as well, and I noticed that I had this 15-minute, I'm looking at the 15-minute chart as well to kind of give me a directional permissive. I'm adding another filter, so based on the 15-minute chart, depending on the direction of the 15-minute chart, it's filtering out whether I can go long or short. So that let me check right. Yep. So yeah. So adding this additional solver on here, and also I can see I'm also looking at I'm also using the Inflection Solver to help out as well. And so I can see here that we do have one bar going up and we're still getting a short direction. So adding that Inflection Solver removed this. Let me mark this bar here. So it removed this signal on this bar. It removed the short signal on this bar by adding the Inflection Solver. So let me add that and see what changes are made. And oh, that's right. The inflection solver defaults to the SMA. But I need the inflection solver to be looking at price. Let me switch this over to price. And there we go. So now we're getting a single short signal out of BloodHound when we get our first bar reversal. All right. And since we have quite a few new people, let me kind of show you quickly what the inflection solver is doing. So I turned off all the other solvers, and all I have left on is the inflection solver. And let's see. Let me put this on line, and that'll help illustrate the inflection solver better. Put that on the line chart, and of course the line chart's black. Let me change the color here. So what the inflection solver is looking at, essentially inflection kind of means reversal. It's a reversal point. So we can see here where the red arrow is, and also where this one is, right? You can see the closing price reverses direction, so that's an inflection point, and we get a short output from this solver after that occurs on the first bar where that occurs. And also the same is true in the opposite direction. So like right here. So we got a reversal point here on price, and the next bar that creates that reversal point, we get a long signal. Right? And so there's no output from the solver, in between. So you can see here, as long as price keeps moving in the same direction, there's no output from that solver. So that's what the inflection point is doing, is it's looking for these reversal points here. So let me kind of back up, and we'll take a look at just kind of like the raw divergence system. Put this back on candlestick, and
Order filled.
I lost my orange candlesticks. Well, let me put these back here real quick. Okay, there we go. Right. So with just the main solvers that are looking at the volume oscillator and also looking at price. All right. So essentially, these 6 solvers are kind of looking at a 3-bar period, looking for that divergence, looking for this divergence between the indicator and price. Right, and then we add a bar direction solver, which narrows it down a little bit, looking for the bar in the correct direction. And then when we add the Inflection Solver, that narrows it down even more. So yeah, I could throw all these into the logic template, and I could eliminate using the inflection solver if I use the logic template. So let me kind of demonstrate that for you real quick. But let me name this. So I'm looking for the price inflection. So, all right. So let's build a logic template. Let me move my chart over a little bit. And create a new logic template, and typically I'll call it the entries, as opposed to building a system that gives you exit signals. All right, let me just dump the solvers on here. So you can grab your solvers from this pull-down menu here, or you can right-click on the green workboard, and you can also add your solvers from there as well. And since I need all of these solvers to be in agreement, I'm going to use the AND node. So we have to AND all of these solvers in together. Plug that in there. And as soon as I plug the first solver in, we can see we're getting, BloodHound starts giving us an output on the chart. And so that's why we call this interface real-time mode. Because BloodHound, as soon as you make any changes in BloodHound's interface, the changes reflect instantaneously on your chart. So as I continue to plug in each solver into the AND node, you can see it's changing the output. All right, so now we have the three solvers looking at volume. You're looking at the volume oscillator, so we can determine what direction it's moving in. And also you can see that if I click on a solver, you can see I have the interface available to me on that solver in this workspace on the logic tab. So I can go in here and I can tweak the solvers without having to jump back to the solver tab and tweak them. Right? So I can work with my solvers and tweak them and adjust them, to get a better result that I'm looking for. Let me continue to add these guys in here. All right, so now I just added the three solvers that are looking at price. And there's what we have so far. And now let's add in the bar direction, and then I can see it killed the signal as soon as I put in the bar direction. Let me disconnect that guy. So here's what's occurring. Using the AND node, the AND node is very strict, right? It creates a, you can see it creates this digital type output, and so as essentially all of these solvers, all 6 of these solvers have to be in agreement. However, they're not always in agreement. Well, let's see. In this particular case, they are in agreement. However, if I add this bar direction solver, it kills the signal. And that's because, right, if you remember how we set up the solver that's looking at price, right, so this solver is looking at the current closing price to the previous closing price, and it's looking for, so let me back up here. So this solver is looking at the current, right, it has a displacement of 0, so it's looking at the current bar marked by this green arrow, and it's comparing, oops, and it's comparing to the previous bar, with, right, so this indicator B has a displacement of 1, so it's comparing to the previous bar, right, so it's looking for the close to be lower than the previous bar in order to give us a long signal. So if I plug this solver in here, right, so this one solver is giving us a long signal because, right, the close is lower than the previous close. But if I jump forward 1 bar, you can see the same signal is now giving us a short output because now the close is higher than the previous bar. And so that disagrees with the bar direction solver. So if I plug the bar direction solver in, right, you see that we actually get a long output from that solver. And so using the AND node requires all the solvers to be in agreement. Whereas when before I had the logic template in use, BloodHound kind of, if you're not using the AND node, you have more what's the right word? Some more slack. You have more leeway, whereas using the AND node doesn't have what's the right word? Doesn't have any. Doesn't give you any kind of leeway. It has to be exact. So let me show you how we can resolve that. So I can switch this AND node. I can convert it over to the ratio node. Because essentially, if you're not using a logic template and you're only using the solver tab, BloodHound is essentially joining all of these solvers together in a ratio format. So essentially it's kind of doing the same thing as plugging them all into this ratio node. And so now, if you kind of remember what the output used to look like before this logic template was being used, right? We had, over here we had 2 bars, 2 shorts, and over here we had 2 longs. So now we're kind of back to that. And then if I plug in the inflection, then it adding an additional criteria now gets us to what we're wanting. So now as price is moving up and we get a one bar reversal here, then we get our short signal, only in that one bar. And that's more of what we're looking for. So, now there is a way that I could use this as an AND node. So if I put this back to an AND node, let me disconnect my inflection solver. There we go. And so if using the bar direction, this bar direction is it's working on the current bar. You can see it doesn't have a displacement. And so in order to get around the issue of where this closing price is greater than, let me just move it over here. So when we get this bar reversal here, where the close is greater than the previous bar, right? So it, these other solvers here, which are looking, right, which are comparing the close to the close, what I can do is I can displace these solvers by one more additional displacement, and that will resolve my issue. All right, so I'm gonna move these over. All right. So these three solvers right here, the ones a little further to the left, those are the solvers looking at price, looking at the closing price. And so what I did is I took these three solvers and I told them to look back an additional bar. So now this solver here is no longer looking at the current bar. It's actually looking back one bar. So the bar direction solver is now looking at the current bar, and this solver is now looking back one bar. So it's not. Remember, it used to be looking. We can see by the name, it used to be looking at the current bar, but I told it to look back one bar. So now it's looking back one bar. And so now we have our signal.
Order filled.
So now this solver and this solver are no longer in conflict. So I changed what bar they're looking at. So yeah. So let's see, it's 12:20, and I kind of need to wrap this up. And I see there's some questions or maybe some comments. So let me get through these. I'll read through these and see if there's any questions to answer. All right, Eric had to leave. Adam, this is way over my head for a new BloodHound member. Well, you know, Adam. Oh shoot, Adam's left. Oh darn. Yeah, you know, for anybody that thinks this is way over their head, you know, anything for the first time is way over your head. You just got to stick with it. If you want to learn something, you just got to stick with it, and over time, you know, just the knowledge just builds up, and then one day it just all clicks and you get it. Let's see. So Bob, rather than using a volume oscillator, I prefer using the GOM CD. Yeah, you know, Bob, I'm actually, that's kind of like another direction I want to start going to here probably the next couple of months. Is I'm going to, I started playing with the GOM CD indicators, and you know, and trying to you know, see how well it works out with BloodHound. and stuff like that. And the GOM CD, the GOM indicators do work with BloodHound. Not all of them. So like the GOM indicators that are looking at what's the right word? The volume histogram, right? Where you get a horizontal, horizontal histogram on your chart. Basically those type of plots aren't readable by other indicators. It's just the way that display the data. Yeah, it's just the way that the data is. But any of the indicators that that give you kind of a line plot, right? BloodHound can read those. So I do know that BloodHound can work with the GOM, some of the GOM volumes, and yeah, I want to kind of start doing some workshops on those as well. So I want to do some more testing and kind of come up with some real applications instead of just saying, yeah, look, BloodHound can do this. I like to show some real applications of that can be useful in a trading system. So that's kind of where I want to go, what I want to start looking at in the next couple of months here. Let's see. Also, you commented GOM CD configured for bid ask data and not total volume. Right. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't used to using the GOM data or the GOM indicators, it's an indicator. It's kind of an add-on package that you can find up on Big Mike's. I think it's also on NinjaTrader's forum. That it's a way of storing the bid and ask volume for an instrument, but you have to record it. So you can't download this data. You have to record it in real time in order to use it historically. Right? So it's a recorder recording the bid and ask volume that you can later go back and pull up the historical data. So it's a recorder, and it creates files on your computer that it can use historically. It's a great tool, right? Because unfortunately, NinjaTrader doesn't store bid and ask volume, in its system. Let's see. Let me get through some other. Let's see, Ernie. How long does it take the average Joe to learn this? Ernie, that's very subjective. It's kind of like, well, what's the average Joe? I guess it kind of depends if you're more of a left brainer or right brainer. People that are more analytical probably grasp this quicker than those who are more artistic. I've seen great traders who are very artistic that can look at a chart and they just kind of see the price action. Price action is kind of an artistic. If you're looking at something, that's more of an artistic look versus analyzing data. So for an artistic mind, it might take a little longer, but it also depends on your determination. Definitely, you want to give yourself the time to do this. Like I said, I'm here to help you guys. So if you get stuck on something, you can book an appointment with me, and I don't. If you book an appointment and say, hey, would you do this for me? That's not what these appointments are for. We don't build the system for you. I'll use whatever you have as a training tool. Right, and so if you're wanting to build, a component of your system, that's great. I like to use something realistic to help teach you. but you know, these one-on-one sessions, I turn them into a training session, not just build them for you. You know, so I want you to learn something from this, you know, from our one-on-one appointments that we make. So, let me see. So Bob says, I look forward to your GOM tests. All right, cool. Randy, I too use the GOMI indicators in my trading, historical bid ask. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. So Randy mentioned that I think you might need to be an elite member, and Big Mike does post the GOM indicator data files up on his site for download. There's a forum, or yeah, there's a posting dedicated for downloading the historical data files for the GOM indicator. That's up there as well. And you may need to be an elite member in order to see that posting. I'm not sure. Let's see. Randy also mentions, let's see, thanks, Zach. All right, thanks, Randy. I'm sure we're going to have a fun time in Vegas. Who can't? It's kind of hard not to have a fun time in Vegas. So, and so Ernie says, "Don't worry, I like this, and it will be worth the effort." Yeah, well, you know, Ernie, I bet just like it, you know, it takes time to learn trading. You know, it takes time to get your mindset set for trading, so you don't become, you know, the majority who usually fail at trading just because they don't have their mindset set correctly. You know, so it takes time to learn, you know, to get your mindset changed. But and so just like with that, you know, it takes a little time to learn BloodHound as well. But once you kind of get some of the concepts, so Ernie, yeah, you know, here's another good resource. In the workshops, there's at least one, maybe two workshops dedicated to kind of the overall concepts of using solvers. And I think that will help you a lot in kind of getting used to understanding how BloodHound works. You know, so when I say kind of concepts and some overviews, like every solver has an output section, right? So you know, what is this output section? You know, what's it do? What's it for? You know, so once you kind of grasp that kind of concept of how you modify the output section to get the results you want, you know, once you get this as a concept, learning BloodHound comes a lot simpler. Also, there's a bunch of solvers that have these settings, like this comparison solver has a difference. There's the threshold solver, right? And so it has this setting where you can set different thresholds, right? So once you kind of get the concept of using thresholds in combination with the output, and the same goes for the comparison solver. So once you understand how to use this large amount and small amount with the output section, so you can see this output here says is linked to the large amount, right? So this large amount is controlling this output section that says large amount. So once you kind of grasp those concepts, picking up BloodHound becomes a lot simpler. And so there are some workshops, probably about, I'm thinking about maybe 8 weeks back, is probably where those workshops are. So just kind of read the description of those workshops and you'll find it. And so that'll help you get started too. And you know, it's probably would be a good idea for us to maybe move that workshop over to the getting started section as well. But we'd want to clean it up a little bit as well, probably, before we do that. So, okay, well, great guys. Just want to check with Jeremy, see if there's any last words from Jeremy. And just a reminder, Jeremy's going to be doing the next workshop. And if any of you guys are going, you might find Jeremy and I will be wearing either black shirts with the Shark Indicator logo or orange shirts, orange polos with the Shark Indicator logo on them. And we'll probably be together. So if you're there, you find us. Okay, I see Jeremy's on, so hang on.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to add a little bit about that, Ernie. BloodHound has a little bit of a learning curve, but once you're kind of over the hurdle, you can create systems very rapidly with it. And you get to Zach's proficiency. And actually, when he first started using it, after about a month or two, he was able to put together systems with 5 minutes and 10 minutes and things that would take a developer many hours and many weeks really to accomplish the same thing. So it's kind of like once you pass that initial hump, the time savings like going forward is tremendous. So it's that's the kind of the point of this kind of rapid signal building tool. And this is just kind of like, I guess, the first layer, the first wave of stuff, and we have some people that have been using BloodHound for quite some time, and they're doing some pretty advanced stuff with it. And so they want more nodes and more tools, and so we're working on a new version called version 1.1, which is all included, by the way. If you purchase BloodHound, you get everything, you get all the updates included for a lifetime. So there's no worries of ever kind of missing out on new features. But the new stuff that we're developing is going to add kind of an extra layer of functionality that programmers are used to using with advanced logic, like if-then statements and truth tables, and the ability to manipulate these kind of streams of data that are coming in, coming out, and count signals going backwards, and doing all sorts of fancy stuff. And so they're just kind of more building blocks that we're kind of giving. And of course, you don't have to use them, but they're there when you get to that level of proficiency, so that you can basically build just what anything a programmer could build, just a lot faster and in kind of in real time. So that's the end goal, is sort of, again, give you guys the tool sets to build kind of whatever kind of system that works for you. So and you have to describe things quite specifically to a computer. You can't just sort of tell it, I kind of want to do trade when the market's going up. Well, you have to tell the computer, what do you mean by when the market's going up? Like you have to define it, indicators, and on top of that, you got to use the solvers and whatnot to tell it exactly what in your definition is what you think is going up. So. Yep, and then we're always again, taking input from people like you, and if there's one thing Zach and I have been trying to figure out as well is also how to hide maybe some functionality for beginning users, so that they can sort of jump into the most the important stuff first without being cluttered with extraneous kind of advanced features. So we've been sort of thinking about maybe making a basic mode that will kind of hide some functionality, just to make it a little easier to sort of pick it up and run with it, and then when you feel comfortable with using the features, then you can unlock the rest. So I know exactly kind of where you're coming from, because I used to use I first used Adobe Photoshop, or Adobe Illustrator is even harder, I find. I was lost for quite some time until I sort of took some tutorials and then learned the system. But if you look out there, what people are able to create with Adobe Photoshop and this Illustrator, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm nowhere near that proficiency, but it took me a while to figure out my way around it. But I can understand, kind of once you're past that initial hurdle, I'm able to do things that otherwise, obviously wouldn't be able to do by hand. So anyway, that's a long kind of winded way of saying, just you know, the short-term effort, you know, the whole intention is that it will pay off, and you'll be able to save a tremendous amount of time down the future. So anyway, so Zach won't be with us next week, and he's going to be flying to Vegas before I do. So I will see you guys next week, and again, it's going to be more of a reversal role. I want to ask you guys questions on what you want to see with the product, where it's going, and additional features in the future, and so on and so forth. So anyways, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.